The way you judge the health of a gacha game is by looking at its cheerleaders, not by how pretty or famous they are, although in some ways that could be a factor.
Oh my god! Don't do this to me!
Instead, I am talking about how happy they are about the game they are cheering on. But sometimes, things can get a little fishy, like those moments where the community is outraged and unhappy with the state of the game, while the top creators are just smiling and waving, as if things are all fine and dandy, and you are overreacting. There are many such cases, especially in Genshin Impact. But today, we are going to talk about a very unexpected anomaly.
For a while, I feel like the community and myself have thought about this simple question. Why does it seem like Genshin Impact doesn't listen to us?
𝗖cie𝗽𝗆𝗵𝗁 uploaded a video called Why Genshin Impact Doesn't Listen to You. That caught a lot of people, including me, off guard. 𝗖cie has built his entire brand on being the most positive, easygoing guy in the community. He is a creator who is known for being very optimistic about almost every single patch, even when the updates are dry. So when someone like that stops spreading what most would consider toxic positivity and openly drops a video about the developers completely ignoring their player base, it probably means the frustration has finally gotten too great to hide. It really makes you wonder if this is confirmation that the game is actually in a terrible spot, or if even its biggest defenders are just getting tired of playing defense for a company that doesn't care. If you want to see more content from me, feel free to smash the like button and subscribe. Hit the notification bell icon to keep up with my videos. Without wasting any more of your time, let's just get right into it. Look at 𝗖cie𝗽𝗆𝗵𝗁. He is cute.
What are you, fucking gay?
But he is also the biggest creator in the Genshin Impact space, and arguably the biggest in the gacha space as a whole. People usually refer to him as the most positive guy around, especially for Hoyo games, calling him 𝗖cie𝗽𝗆𝗵𝗁. But that is just what I hear people say. Maybe you have a totally different opinion of him, and that is completely fine. I wanted to verify this before going into his video, so I took a peek at his channel. And well, it is just very typical content for a massive gacha creator. A quick scroll and I can already see a few videos where he completely wails on the game. And he does this constantly. C6 R5 character builds and testing. I mean, damn, the privileges of being a top creator, am I right? This video, I rebuilt my first 5-star, and the very first thing he did to rebuild her was to pull her max constellations. Full C6, 7 whole copies of a single character with real money. I mean, that is just what he does, I guess, paying the electricity bills of a multi-billion-dollar company. But anyways, it brings us to the real issue. Does he really live up to the name of 𝗖cie𝗽𝗆𝗵𝗁? Is he really a complete shill for the game who doesn't address the negatives of the game at all? Does he defend it whenever possible? Well, after doing my research, I can safely conclude that that is not true. Or at least, not fully true. It is more like sitting on the fence. And if you don't get it, let me spell it out for you. When a Genshin livestream gives teasers for a good story quest, he will praise it, like everyone would. When a Genshin livestream doesn't live up to his expectations, he will say it is okay. He doesn't outright call it bad. If anything, I haven't found a single livestream reaction video of his where he calls out any livestream for being bad, even for the worst ones.
But yeah, other than that, being real with you, yeah, the update seems okay. It seems okay. Like, yeah, I don't know. So that's pretty much all I have to say about that. It's like, it's okay. So
he will at least say that it is okay. And after he says that it's okay, he immediately backtracks and makes sure to clarify that it is not like it is bad. And I just think it's crazy because after all of that, he'll straight up call it a filler patch. But then he says again, it's just okay.
Some might say a filler patch. But yeah, no, I just think it's okay. Like if I had to rate it out of 10, 6.5, 7, 6, not 6. A 6. Yeah. For me personally.
Like, brother, we all know you didn't like it. Just say it's bad. It's not that deep. I mean, it's incredibly blatant sometimes.
And here's the thing. I know I'm probably gonna get people that are gonna be like, Doro hates Genshin. Doro hates Genshin. Wow.
It gets even more obvious when the developers introduce something that very clearly hurts the game's health. Look at what happened with the Natlan updates. They pay-gated exploration quality of life features behind a paid gacha system. Now, this is clearly bad. Doro's reaction to this was literally saying he didn't know how to feel and that it kind of worried him.
People save their primo gems that they work hard for the characters that they really want, as they should. But it kind of sucks that, like, okay, I don't want Mualani, but I want to be able to traverse Natlan a lot easier. Well, you need Mualani for that, right? So I don't know how I feel about that. That kind of worries me. Doro's here to tell you, at the end of the day, as fun as Mualani is to traverse, and Kanish is probably going to be as well, still pull for the characters that you want.
Brother, you do know. You know how you feel about that for sure. Just say it. Say you dislike it.
Doro hates Genshin.
It's bad. It hurts the game. It's not player friendly. We are not going to half-ass this. And let me tell you what, funny enough, that tone is exactly what breaks people's brains. Because the people who are happy with the game think that Doro doesn't praise the game enough, while the people who are unhappy with the game think that Doro doesn't criticize it enough. It's a total lose-lose situation. And that is why I feel like if you don't like something, you should just say it without sugarcoating it. If you try to please everybody, you will just end up losing. But hey, he is the #1 content creator in the gacha space. What do I know compared to him, am I right? I should be the one taking notes here, learning from him. So why don't we talk about the video now? Right at the start, he mentions that this topic is based on a question he has been sitting on for a very long time. In a way, that is him admitting that these issues, and the devs ignoring them, have been a problem for ages. Even if he didn't say anything about it back then, he kind of just kept things sunshine and rainbows in his channel. But hey, at least it is being acknowledged now. In fact, Doro44 actually making this video is already miles better than all of the other Genshin content creators who just pretend everything is totally fine with the game, defending the bad practices of the game, defending the parts of the game where it's lacking, lying about the people who criticize them. And you know what? I'm happy because finally, one of the biggest voices in this space is actually speaking out. To me, that sounds very validating.
Genshin isn't just a video game. Genshin is a live service anime casino wearing an open world RPG costume. And I truly say that with love. But that does mean that every decision that 𝗖ญ่makes has to balance two things. How do we make players happy? And how do we make players want to keep logging in and potentially spending money? Because remember, 𝗖꽤's a business, not your friend.
Now, Doro spends a huge chunk of his video explaining that 𝗖្‍යverse is a business. I don't know who he thinks his audience is, but he lays it out like it's some grand revelation. If you're an adult, you already know how this works, right? Every gacha game company is a business, and everyone wants to make money. If they don't generate enough money, they will end of service, or EOS. And the players will move on to the next game. This is all completely normal. As much as Genshin Impact's devs likes to joke about them being generous and not wanting to make money, if you look at how they have been moving recently, trust me, we all know they're trying to get hella bank. The problem here isn't that they want to make money. That is never the issue. What makes Genshin different from the others, and why its players are rioting right now, is the simple elements of greed. Doro frames it as a balance between player satisfaction and corporate profits, but the actual state of the game is way worse than he lets on. You know, maybe it's his tone, or maybe that is just who he is. But in this video, he doesn't really get into the specifics. So let me slide in with my receipts, right? Doro gave some examples, and that is already looking pretty bad for the 𝗖្‍යverse HQ.
Players want a new character to feel very strong and usable at C0 versus C2. But 𝗖្‍ය wants the constellations and the weapons to feel tempting. Like literally in 2020, you could have pulled Venti and you would have been like, dude, I can destroy anything. This is awesome. I hope this game never changes. But then in 2026, you pull a DPS character and it's like, oh, great, awesome. Do you have their premium support and their premium weapon and another character? Because you're gonna need all of that for them to do something. Do something. It's like, bro, come on. I got like 47 primo gems here. Cut me a break.
But the reality is way worse. Hoyoverse wants players to buy pulls, so they made sure that updates, on average, give pulls that barely reach soft's pity. Players wanting more pulls sounds like entitled beggars, but the reality is, the treatment is just so awful. Nobody should feel like an entitled beggar just for wanting a reasonable chance to get a new character, especially while these devs are sitting on billions of dollars laughing at you for adding on to their wealth. Even if you manage to beat the odds and get the character, the realization will come to you very quickly that you only bought half a product. Because as time goes by, characters are increasingly designed to feel incomplete at C0. To make them actually feel good to play, the developers push you towards constellations, meaning you have to pull duplicates of the same exact character, sometimes to even give them things they should have been doing at C0. If it isn't that, it's their signature weapon from a separate, notoriously punishing weapon banner, the one that doesn't carry over the guaranteed 5-star fate points to the next banner. Lately, it's gotten even more restrictive. Now they pair new characters with specific premium limited 5 stars, basically forcing you to pull 2 expensive units just to make one of them function properly. The math is completely beyond saving. I don't know how you could even defend this. This is just bad. It just feels horrible. But what is the point of getting constellations, weapons, and characters that synergize well with other characters other than just collecting? Because I know some of you pull characters that you like and end up breaking your accounts in the progress. Most of the time, you want to do well in the endgame, right? You want to beat the hardest contents in the game with your favorite characters. And I think that is great. I would personally love to do that myself. And I'm sure a lot of people do too. Fun fact, in the past, I commended Genshin's power balance. Sure, there are a few characters that completely break the meta. I have seen content creators use the exact same teams for years. Those teams being Morgana and the national team, you've probably heard of it. But most of the time, you can still clear with very niche units. And I was completely fine with that. You had the option to clear the endgame however you wanted to. You want to do it the easy way? You want to do it the hard way? For the fun of it, for the thrill of it, for satisfaction? It was great at one point. Genshin used to be a game where you could pull for whoever you liked, build them up, and clear the hardest content without much of a headache. And it was great. Everybody liked it. So what made them change it all? Greed.
In Genshin Impact, we've had multiple types of endgame over the past few years. We've had the Spiral Abyss, which is basically just fighting against hyperinflated HP overworld enemies in a timer. We've had Imaginarium Theater, which makes sure that you have a lot of characters built and then puts you in situations where you have to fight against hyperinflated HP enemies against a timer, but with some cool little buffs here and there. Now we have Stygian Onslaught, which I really expected to be something a little bit different. Obviously, I expected a timer. I expected it to be a longer timer, and I expected the enemies to have like super fun mechanics and stuff and different things, kind of like the cubes in that one event where they did so many different movesets and stuff. And instead, what we got is basically Spiral Abyss with only bosses and a absolute boatload of HP and a really short timer. Now,
waifu over meta? That philosophy is completely dead. Now they specifically tailor the highest difficulty content to match the exact mechanics of whatever new character is currently on the limited banner. Because just like Doro said, Hoyoverse needs to ensure new characters sell well. But in doing so, they made the endgame in such a way that the newer characters are almost a requirement. New characters are supposed to introduce a fun new way to play the game, not whatever this is. You are looking at a company that has already pulled in billions of dollars, and it feels like their wallets are still screaming for more, as if billions of dollars aren't enough money already. And then you look around and realize that not every company is like that. They don't treat their players like dogs. They treat them like real human beings. Are they your friend? No. Are they still a business? Yes. But why are they not like Genshin? Again, the difference is greed, and Genshin has a lot of it. The more you open your eyes to reality, the more you see it.
They increased the resin cap from 120 to 160, which at the time was very nice. But it also kind of created the first Genshin community meme where players ask for like a change and then 𝗖𝗍 kind of gives a small improvement. Like feeding a little bird, like, here you go, little crumbs.
One way to increase retention, which is heavily abused by games in this genre, is friction. Friction is built into the gacha game business model. Many elements that players find incredibly tedious, like the limited original resin energy system or daily chores, artifact grinding, are designed entirely on purpose. They create controlled friction to enforce FOMO, fear of missing out, and establish daily routines that encourage players to log in regularly and eventually spend money. They will slightly adjust friction to keep you from quitting entirely, but they won't eliminate it. 𝗖𝗍 talked about the resin situation back in 2020. 𝗖𝗍 initial fix was raising the resin cap from 120 to 160, and this sets a precedent where the community asks for a major change, and 𝗖𝗍 provides tiny marginal improvements, like feeding the little birds crumbs. And you know what? I'm surprised there is still a misconception about this resin situation. 6 years into the game, and it seems like people still think this was an improvement. Maybe it is, but it's not the way you think it is. When people say they want more resin, so they have more things to do in the game, the problem was never the resin cap. It was the resin recharge rates. Original resin regenerates at a rate of 1 resin every 8 minutes, and for 6 straight years, it has never changed. It never got buffed. So for the people who think that increasing the resin cap from 120 to 160 means more resin, you are just wrong.
Hey guys, I know we were all worried about how much food we were allowed to eat every day, so I came up with the great solution. Bigger bowls! So now you can take your food and put it in a bigger bowl. You won't get any more food, but you know, the bowl's bigger. Good news is, well, the new rate up banner's coming up soon, so make sure to save up your money.
You still have small amounts of cereal. The size of the bowl doesn't fix the problem. The analogy is like feeding the birds crumbs, but the reality is, it is like feeding the little birds the illusion of crumbs. Because these improvements never really fix the problems themselves. I think the more fitting example would be fragile resin, because that is actually giving you more resin per week. But of course, there is still a catch. It is not like the other resin where you can just use whenever you want. This one has a deadline, and if you go past the deadline, it will just expire. But yeah, anyways, that's not important. 𝗖𝗍 supplements his take on friction by saying that it is a deliberate part of the live service business model.
Genshin will adjust friction, but it won't remove friction entirely. Because something I realize is that friction is part of the live service model. Having limited resin per day slows you down, but then the daily commissions bring you back. Limited banners, they create urgency. Events create FOMO, fear of missing out, for viewers who don't know what that means. And all this stuff is not an accident. It's all part of a structure. And the answer is, and you might not like this, but some of those annoyances are part of their business model.
𝗖𝗍 will adjust friction to manage outrage, but they will never remove it entirely. And in my opinion, that is fair. Every single gacha game out there has this. But where do you draw the line? How much friction is too much friction, right? How about moving your artifacts manually every time you want to use a different team? How about spamming the mouse button through an unvoiced story quest that has very bloated dialogue? I would understand creating friction and bottlenecks for things that have direct profits, like limited resin, incentivizing you to pay primo gems for more resin. It's a shitty thing to do, but it's understandable in a business perspective. But these other things I just mentioned, how would that profit them at all? How much is player time spent worth for a multi-billion-dollar revenue generating game? And how much does that all amount to the value of actual player satisfaction? How many more investors do you need? You are already hosting 𝗖𝗍 Fest throughout the whole world, getting incredible amounts of revenue from patches you barely put any effort into, and you still want more? It's that thing I talk about a lot in this video, greed. The thing is, this greed doesn't just affect their decisions. This also affects how they even see your feedback. You think all those surveys you've submitted, all of those conversations you have had with the customer service, all your posts on Twitter, you think 𝗖𝗍 sees them? To be fair, maybe they do. But do they actually consider them? 𝗖𝗆𝗿𝗵𝗵 argues that probably not. Why? There are filters that your feedback has to go through for it to even be considered by the devs as valid feedback. And even then, they might just not implement it. It's amazing.
For change to actually affect something, it's gonna have to affect one of these three things: revenue, reputation, retention. RRR. If something is hurting those, Genshin's more likely to respond. If something's just annoying but people keep logging in, well, enjoy hearing Catherine say applesauce for the 476,000th time.
𝗖𝗆 made a catchy formula and called it the 3 R's, meaning revenue, reputation, and retention. He honestly sounds like he's trying to land an office job at 𝗖𝗆verse. But actually, he is completely right about how the system works, at least in my opinion. The developers use a massive corporate filter, and if player feedback or a complaint doesn't really threaten their bottom line, and people are still living in denial and refuse to believe it, even though this has been proven multiple times in the past to be the case. For example, as provided in the video, look at the difference between how they handled Zhongli versus 𝗖𝗍. Early on, Zhongli came out with an arguably terrible kit.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
And because he was the literal god of Liyue, which is a region based on China, the domestic Chinese player base revolted. His banner sales plummeted. I'm pretty sure there were riots outside of miHoYo HQ. At first, the developers responded with something along the lines of, "Stop trying to build Zhongli as a DPS because we built him as a support character." But the player base kept arguing about how the Chinese representation character was a weak support character instead of a strong god. And I guess 𝗖𝗆 folded and eventually gave Zhongli a rework, a buff so great that Zhongli became one of the best characters in the game for years to come because their revenue and reputation were on the line. Fast forward to 𝗖𝗍, who was released years later. Her kit was described as broken, and not the good type of broken. I mean broken to the point where she could barely function. Just like before, the community outrage was massive, but because her banner didn't threaten their finances in a way they cared about, they just left her as she was, a new bad standard character. Plus, the common consensus in the community was that the player base from China didn't care about 𝗖𝗍. The outrage wasn't nearly as huge as it was for Zhongli, but I would argue that money is more of a factor here.
And also the game was young enough where Genshin felt more pressure to, appease the audiences. We thought we learned that if a character is bad, we complain and 𝗖𝗆 will listen. And then 𝗖𝗆 learned, never let this happen again.
It is the exact same story with the Natlan updates. The community completely went to war over the character skin tones.
But why?
And I already know behind the screen, you are thinking that this is a silly situation to be having. But no, this was a really massive issue back then. There were huge online petitions, and even the game's own voice actors were publicly calling out the company on social media. Their own VAs. Isn't that crazy? No wonder almost all of them are replaced now. That's a joke, by the way. I'm so sorry. 𝗖𝗆verse didn't even bother to give a response. They completely ignored the entire thing because, despite the massive noise on Twitter, these devs knew that the character banners would still bring in millions of dollars. I have a feeling that the devs were thinking something like, "Oh really? You don't want to pull for the Natlan characters? You want to boycott? That's fine." But before that, I should probably mention that this character can grapple. This one can surf. And this one? Oh, this one flies with the gun. It doesn't have to make sense. You're flying. Oh, and after all that, we have an Archon who can do all of that with a motorcycle. Isn't that fun? Are you sure you don't want to spend money and pull? What? What did you say? Give these quality of life features for free? Don't be silly. What about our money? Just spend money and pull, okay? Because if not, we will make sure that you will have a worse time exploring the new region. Sounds horrible, right? So just pull, okay? But guess what, guys? They got away with it. Like, think about it. How come when Genshin does it, it's okay? Look at every other game in the space. If they gave their players the same treatment as how Genshin treats their player base, the players would actually riot. But how did Genshin manage to not just persevere, but dominate? So much so that they even have very loyal and fanatical defenders. Well, you gotta consider who they are competing with. For a long time, time, Genshin literally holds a monopoly in terms of open world gacha. The only competition they have had for years was Honkai Star Rail, which, for the most part, is their sister game. Or in other words, brother from another mother. That doesn't make sense. For its first 3 years, Genshin completely dominated its specific open world gacha niche with no true rivals. Because Genshin players had nowhere else to go, the developers didn't need to compete for their affection.
But Genshin didn't have a big competitor. Star Rail launched into, the turn-based market, which actually had rivals within it. So 𝗖𝗆 had to be generous to keep HSR alive. But Genshin, where are you gonna go? Wuthering Waves wasn't out yet. We were trapped, and so they honestly just didn't bother.
Don't worry, we all noticed how Genshin has improved a lot since Wuthering Waves came out, but that is a story for another time. The thing is, after having a monopoly for years, the developers have spent those years mastering the arts of conditioning.
See, that's the pattern, right? Okay? That's how this works. 𝗖𝗆 lowered our expectations. All right, stick with me here. They lowered our expectations on purpose so that the bare minimum would feel like a gift. Makes sense, right? We got trained like a dog, and it worked. We accepted it.
Basically, they train their players to have incredibly low expectations. And when you're used to being starved with 60 pulls per patch, getting 80 feels like a luxury. If their first game was Genshin, that is even worse, because they wouldn't know what high rewards feel like. All they know is the fulfillment of eating crumbs. Starvation is the normal state for them. And all Genshin has to do to win over their player base is to just give them just a little bit better than before. If you're used to getting 60 pulls per patch, getting 60 sounds like a luxury, doesn't it? If you're used to bloated NPC dialogue that doesn't matter to the overarching plot, then getting a little bit more cutscene feels like absolute cinema. It is the art of doing just a little bit better than what they have conditioned you to receive. And 𝗖𝗆verse are the absolute master of that. And now let's come to the elephant in the room. I agree with most of the opinions that 𝗖𝗆44 made in this video, but not all of them. Some of them are genuine cope, and I feel like they need to be addressed because, well, 𝗖𝗆 is a massive creator, and I think it would hurt the community if these became the common consensus. The first one is the excuse for Genshin not doing buffs for characters after their release.
Genshin has been very, very careful about changes that they make to a character after release. They'll fix bugs, they'll fix descriptions, they'll change and improve systems around characters, but a direct buff, kind of rare. Because here's the thing, and I thought about this when I was writing this. Once players believe characters can be changed, every banner becomes like a war zone, honestly. And trust me, 𝗖𝗆 don't want that.
𝗖𝗆 basically says that if they give in and buff a weak character just because the community complains, every single banner moving forward would become a war zone of non-stop player demands and toxicity. They refuse to listen to character balance complaints because they don't want to set a dangerous precedent. Verbatim,
and trust me, 𝗖𝗆 don't want that.
Really? Source? Where did you hear that from? That is pure cope. The precedent was already set years ago when they gave Zhongli a rework. And speaking from a player's perspective, when someone saves up for months or invests actual cash to pull a 5-star unit only to realize their kit is fundamentally
Dog shit.
like 𝗖𝗆 was at launch, leaving them that way is completely anti-consumer. Gacha games at their core are character collectors, and not being able to pull the characters you like because you're worried they're gonna get power crept a few months later sucks. Well, actually, you can just save your primo gems for the most broken units so they don't get power crept fast. You're just greedy and stupid, and that's why you're losing. What a boring and dull way to play a game. Like, what's the point? You are making excuses for them, avoiding community drama by staying silent. But that silence actually makes things worse. Look at when Kokomi released, and her kit was underpowered. Her voice actor got massively harassed online, and the developers didn't even bother to put out a basic safety statement to protect her. Besides, the argument that they can't change old units falls apart anyway. They literally introduced those buffs for old Mondstadt characters, meaning they are perfectly capable and very much fine with buffing older characters when it suits them. The next one is insane cope. Genshin operates on a 6-week update cycle with new regions, characters, music, and events. 𝗖𝗆 makes an excuse that the developers prefer throwing new things at the players rather than spending precious development time looking backward to fix old systems.
And maybe the answer is because Genshin is like on a cycle. Like every 6 weeks, new events, events, new characters, quests, areas, music, you know, everything. Live stream, drip marketing, new everything. The content machine is insane. And maybe because of that, I don't know, maybe Genshin seems like they're better off making new content and new things versus revisiting old things.
Now, newsflash, the 6-week content machine you speak of is a choice, not a constraint. Players would gladly accept a lighter filler patch if it meant the developer spent that time fixing core systems that have been broken since 2020. That old systems you speak of, we still interact to it till this day. Fixing it would be a huge W. Budget limitations do not exist for a company of this scale. Doro makes this excuse as if Genshin is a game with constant regional expansions, giving updates packed with events that last the whole patch, story quests with impeccable animations that rival a movie, so much so that they can't even code a proper loadout system. If that were the case, the recent community backlash would probably have never happened in the first place. The next one, I am sure, was made as a joke about the devs not fixing bugs or not implementing quality of life updates because of spaghetti code and how they can't really fix it.
But I mean, old systems could be held back by, like, I don't know, spaghetti code or something. Like their original code for the game is just like paper clips and string and they can't really fix it. Or maybe mobile UI limitations, I don't know. But I do believe Hoyo just does a lot of it on purpose.
Well, at least I hope that's a joke. But just to set it straight, Hoyoverse could hire top-class programmers to debug their code. There is no way a multi-billion-dollar revenue-earning nuclear reactor-owning game like Genshin Impact is built on spaghetti code. It could have been the case at the start, I wouldn't doubt it, but now, 6 years after patch, come on, bruh. The tech isn't stopping them. The mobile UI isn't stopping them. They just refuse to do it because making player life easier doesn't directly put money in their pockets. Like, are you gonna pay them for a loadout system? Oh my god, am I giving them ideas? I hope not, bro. At the end of the day, a video game should not feel like a second job. When a development team gets lazy and they rely on cheap, low-effort predatory tricks, refusing to give better quality of life just to force daily player retention, the whole experience stops being fun. You start logging in out of pure obligation because you're terrified of missing out on the next character banner, things that completely kill your actual emotional attachment to the game.
Hoyoverse is not tone deaf. Hoyoverse is not ignoring you. They don't just listen to feedback, they listen to their balance sheet, okay? Money. The feedback only matters when the balance sheet agrees with it.
Hoyoverse is actively ruining its own games by only listening to the money. Look at what is happening currently with the latest Genshin boycott. Literally anything could be happening on social media, and somehow it will get related to Genshin being bad. That is the state of the player base's enjoyment of Genshin. When the community sentiment turns toxic, new player acquisition stalls. Word of mouth is Genshin's biggest marketing tool, but a disgruntled community stops creating fan art, stop writing guides, stop making YouTube videos, and stop hyping up the game to their friends.
Because you asking is not the price they pay for ignoring you. If you want Hoyo to listen, you don't have to scream louder. You have to make ignoring the players the more expensive option. The community is not the customer, okay? The balance sheet is.
If a company waits until revenue plummets to fix problems, they have already lost. Being generous and respecting your players' time doesn't hurt a multi-billion-dollar business. It does the exact opposite. It builds a healthy, loyal community that actually wants to support the game financially because they feel valued, not exploited. Hoyoverse seems to think that it could just ride this wave forever because the banners are still making money right now, but by the time the financial sheets actually show the damage, the players have already mentally checked out and moved on to competitors that treat them with basic respect. Do you think the community's frustration is entirely justified, or are we simply seeing the natural friction of a massive live service business model? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to show your supports. Let me know what you think in the comments, like and subscribe to the channel, share the video to whoever you think would benefit from it. But that is all from me, 𝗖cie𝗽𝗆𝗆𝗵𝘁, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.